Welcome to Neighbors and Friends, a conversation on education and learning among students, teachers, and anyone with a special interest in education. My name is Charles Neighbors, and I'm the moderator. Our interest is to encourage conversation and the exchange of ideas and opinions. This program features 3 outstanding 2008 graduates of Columbia High School who are now concluding their undergraduate university careers. On my right is Margaret Brier, a senior majoring in general engineering with an emphasis on dynamics at Harvey Mudd College in Claremont, California. Next to me is Joyce, majoring in economics at Amherst College in Massachusetts and a varsity baseball pitcher. Next to Dylan is Brian Tumolillo, a junior cadet majoring in systems engineering at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. Next semester, he's temporarily transferring, he claims, to the Air Force Academy at Colorado Springs. Since Brian was the last to be introduced, let's begin with him. Congratulations, Brian. Don't you think the Blues will consider your Grays something of an intrusion on their mountaintop?
Yeah, they might. There's a bit of a rivalry between all the different academies, so I know they'll give me a hard time while I'm there.
Good, I hope so. I say that as a reserve Air Force officer, of course. Seriously, I understand you're opting for Army Aviation will add several years to your active duty obligation. What motivated your choice?
To be honest, the first time I rode in a helicopter was while I was at West Point in the basic training we had there. And I just thought it was really cool. We got to fly in a Black Hawk, and it was just a lot of fun, really exhilarating. When I went in, all I wanted to do was go in the infantry, but then when I got to fly in a helicopter, I just thought it was the coolest thing, and so that's what I want to do now.
Well, they carry infantrymen in helicopters, too. They're called airborne troopers. You probably heard about them.
Right.
Never having flown in an Apache myself, how did you decide to pursue rotary aviation?
Well, with the Army, really the biggest part of aviation is all rotary aircraft. There isn't too much fixed-wing aircraft, and you can't get into fixed-wing aircraft unless you've done the Army aviation and rotary. So unless I wanted to transfer and go into the Air Force or Navy, I'm pretty much stuck with rotary aircraft, which I really don't have a problem with. I want to fly Apaches, which is an attack helicopter.
Well, I got some of those nice Piper jets and a few others that carry general officers around.
Yeah, well, I don't want to be a taxi driver. I want to.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much what the guy from Texas, who's the governor running for president, did when he was in the Air Force. He drove great big buses for the most part. We called them trucks too sometimes. Presumably, Fort Rucker, Alabama, which is the main training base for Army aviation, is in your future. What goes on there?
Down Fort Rucker, it's the like you said, the training base for Army aviators, and basically you get there, and first it's a lot of classroom work, a lot of math, learning about the helicopters, and you basically have to know every single thing about the helicopters before you actually get in the cockpit. So a lot of classroom work first, and then eventually you start getting into flight simulators on the ground, so you're flying an aircraft with a 3D simulator on the ground. And then after that, then you get into actually flying the aircraft with an actual pilot with you, and then eventually you get on to doing solo flights, and then eventually you fly at night, which is the last thing you would learn. And then after that, you go to your unit. But down at Fort Rucker, you'd be there for anywhere between 1.5 years and 2 years before you get sent off to your unit.
And when do you get your wings?
Well, you get wings after your Rucker, and then you get a combat action badge when you get deployed and whatnot. So.
Let's backtrack a little bit. In adjusting to the rigorous life at West Point, which I knew something about as a cadet at Texas A&M, how much did your high school experience help you? And is there anything you would have done differently to prepare yourself better?
Well, going to Columbia High School helped me out because I had a good academic foundation. So in the classroom, it really helped me out compared to some kids from other parts of the country who didn't go to as good a high school as I did. And I thought that was my biggest benefit that I got from high school. as to just the different lifestyle there, I don't think there's anything you can do to prepare for it. It's just completely different. I remember I showed up on the first day and I was like, man, what did I get myself into? But you get used to it. Everyone adapts to it. So, but I mean, there's nothing you really can do to prepare for that.
I want you to know that I used the West Point motto the other day in class here at Columbia. There was a discussion of what a man is. And I said, the kids really did a good job of coming up with descriptions. And I said, one of my favorite mottos of what drives a man is duty, honor, and country. In that order. Your first duty, and I asked the kid, who's their first duty to? Well, my mom, no. No, to yourself. That's your first duty. Your allegiance can be to your country, to your unit, to the buddy who's next to you on duty. But your first duty is to yourself, to be as good a person as you know how to be. What about sports? What did you do at Columbia?
Well, at Columbia, I played lacrosse my freshman and sophomore years, and I always played hockey. And after my sophomore year, I just decided to just play hockey. And I was trying to play hockey at West Point, but it didn't work out. But I just played junior hockey outside of West Point. And then after I graduated, I took a year off and just played hockey for a year before going to West Point.
Defense.
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh, thought so. I say that as a former right wing. That's a good start, Brian, and I think we're going to pass on to the young lady on my right, who is Margaret Brier. Once upon a time, Margaret, women in engineering hardly ever went together. Have things changed for the better recently?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Women have traditionally not had much of a role in science fields. In physics now, I think the field is still 10% female, 90% male. But in engineering and in computer science also recently, there have been big changes. So I know at Harvey Mudd, where I go, we're up to, I think, 40% female.
In the engineering school?
The school overall, and I think also in the engineering school.
Well, I went to an engineering and agricultural college, and ME, mechanical engineering, doesn't seem to be much of a feminine role, since it deals with how things work and how they get put together. Mm-hmm. What motivated your desire to study engineering?
Well, I really liked physics in high school, and I really liked math, but there aren't really a lot of careers you could do with just physics and just math. To be a physicist, you almost always have to go to graduate school and then work in academia for a long time, if not for your whole career. And sometimes physicists will, end up being trained as engineers and go work at national labs. But I don't know, mechanical engineering in particular is a great way to use the physics that, that we learned in high school and that I continued to study in college, and actually do something productive, to make everyday things.
In the interest of full disclosure, I would tell you that my father was a chemical engineer. So I grew up with an engineer, and I have more than simple respect for them. I know what they do. I did industrial publicity for a long time. You mentioned in your notes your ideas for improving roller coasters. How did that come about?
Well, at Harvey Mudd and at a lot of engineering schools, students have to do a senior engineering project. And this year, one of the senior engineering projects, which I got lucky to be chosen for, is for Paramount Pictures designing an energy-efficient roller coaster launch and braking system. So most coasters now use a ridiculous amount of energy, basically, to launch the coaster. The coasters can be, 6,000 kilograms, 10,000 kilograms. They could weigh a lot. And then to get the kinetic energy to launch those, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, it takes money, but, also it just seems ridiculous that no one's trying to recapture the energy in braking. So I think a lot of people now have heard of regenerative braking and the Toyota Prius. and in some other applications and some trains. And so my team is looking at how we can implement regenerative braking on a large scale in roller coasters.
Has applications elsewhere, I would guess.
It has a lot of applications, especially in the transportation industry.
You also mentioned in your notes to me that you're president of the student council at Harvey Mudd. How did your work in student government fit into such a demanding scholastic program?
I found it extremely rewarding. So in most classroom experience, you don't have the opportunity to, lead a discussion between 20 people where everyone disagrees on everything, or, try and budget something where, half the room thinks we shouldn't give it any money and the other half thinks it deserves, tens of thousands of
Oh,
dollars.
that sounds like Congress.
It's interesting, but I found it really rewarding. We meet once a week, we have civil discussions, and then we try and break down our $200,000 budget to split it evenly among student activities and clubs. And then, of course, another aspect of my role is working with the administration and making sure that the student body is, angry about the things they need to be angry about and thankful for the things they should be thankful for, things like that.
So you're actually a politician engineer.
Sort of, kind of.
Considering that Harvey Mudd is one of the more prestigious colleges in Southern California, there are other Claremont colleges on the campus. What was it like working with students from other disciplines, since you're a scientist and an engineer?
It's really great, actually. I have a lot of, I have friends who are in all sorts of sciences, but I also, meet people who are studying different things. I talk to people in the student governments of the other schools, and I talk to their student newspapers sometimes for when they're interested about things at Mudd. And yeah, it's really important as an engineer to be able to talk with people who are not in your field and to be able to explain technical concepts.
Most of the engineers that I knew when I was in college were taciturn at best. That's a great experience for you when it comes to working on an engineering team, it would seem. We're gonna take a short break right now, and we'll be right back.
In this economic downturn, libraries across New Jersey are reporting jumps in attendance of as much as 50% over the past year. Nearly 200,000 people use our computers every week.
Who'd have guessed that I'd be job hunting at my age? After spending several hours at home trying to upload my resume, I was just overwhelmed. My library showed me how to do it. Now I'm gaining back my confidence.
New Jersey libraries are transforming lives. Tell us your story.
Welcome back. This is Charles Neighbors, and you're watching Neighbors and Friends, a conversational program about education in the broadest sense of the term. Today, we're talking to former graduates of Columbia High School here in Maplewood, New Jersey, who are entering the shadowy end of their university careers and going on to other things, we hope. Our next guest is Dylan Joyce, who is a student at Amherst University in Amherst, Massachusetts. And Dylan is also a varsity baseball pitcher. As a student athlete, Dylan, what were the positives of your experience while you were at Amherst?
Well, I think my favorite part of it was being able to play baseball for another 4 years. Baseball's been my passion since I was a little kid, and I was really excited about continuing my career after Columbia. And going in as a freshman, it was, the team was a great group of guys that I got to know right away, and they helped me get through the first couple months at college, which are, always a little hectic for a new kid. I guess, yeah, those guys are going to be my friends for the rest of my life, and I'm still in touch with a lot of the guys that I met when they were seniors, and that experience is something I'll never forget.
I think any of us who have played team sports recognize the advantages and the virtues of doing something in a group with a goal in mind, whether it's doubles in tennis or whether it's hockey, as Brian played, as I did. never on any level beyond the rankest amateur, which is why I still have most of my teeth. You mentioned Major League Baseball as a career possibility in your notes to me. Do you think you have a chance of continuing as a pitcher?
I would love to say yes. I think it's more realistic for me to say no to that question. I have a couple teammates at school that I really do believe can play at the next level, but for me, it'd be more in the front office.
What's
of a
your
baseball
ERA?
team. Well, which year? Last year was 2.75.
Come on, man.
It's Division III baseball. I'm not gonna get ahead of myself, but I do. I'll play for as long as my arm holds up.
Right. Okay. Were there any negatives about being a student athlete at Amherst? And how did you deal with them if there were?
I mean, I think the only negative was, it was a lot on my plate when I first came in
Sure.
as a freshman. Adjusting to the college lifestyle as a student is hard enough. But when, we had a fall season that was on our plate right away, and I've never worked harder in terms of in the classroom and on the field, and in the first couple of months when I was there. So it was definitely a struggle at first. I kind of got slapped in the face and realized that I have to take my efforts to the next level. But we had a bunch of great leaders that were the seniors when I was a freshman and juniors, and leaning on them really helped me out.
Let me ask you the same question that I asked Brian. We all went to public high schools before we went to college. I did, you all did. How was it going to Amherst from a public high school?
I think Columbia actually does prepare their students really well. I think I had the fortune to take a lot of AP classes at Columbia, and these two were some of my classmates. I was in contact with a lot of really great students, and we all pushed each other in the classroom. I think that the main struggle for me was just adapting to the college lifestyle. It's a lot more is on you. You're not gonna have homework every day, but you're gonna have a project that's due down the road that you really need to get on yourself about starting a couple weeks early. And I think everyone can deal with that in different ways, but Columbia overall I think prepared me well to be on my own.
That's good to know. I would agree with the overall perception, because in the 5 years that I've been substitute teaching here, that's my conclusion as well. It's an extraordinarily good school. You mentioned Major League Baseball, and you also talked in your notes to me about the possibility of becoming a junior scout. Have you looked into that any further?
Well, I actually am really lucky. The Amherst baseball program has a really extensive alumni system in baseball. 3 of the current 30 GMs in Major League Baseball are Amherst baseball graduates.
Wow.
So I've been in contact with a bunch of people, a bunch of recent grads and older guys, and I think I would really love to work in the front office of a baseball team. It would combine all my interests and allow me to continue my passion of baseball. And the best way to do that is to become a junior scout and work your way up.
Yeah.
That seems to be the best way to go.
You also mentioned summer internships. What sort of work did you do for the 2 finance firms you worked for, or were they the same firm in 2 different summers?
No, 2 summers ago I worked at a small private equity firm, and I was really just doing a lot of busy work for them. They were a smaller firm, they were very busy, but I got to be in contact with a lot of cool people that worked really hard. They basically invested in the knowledge industries, so they invested in a lot of for-profit colleges and such, and so it was pretty cool to kind of get a different idea of investments and kind of get an inside look at how these guys interact every day.
So you're going to go to finance school for an MBA?
Maybe down the road. I'm not really sure.
Okay. Would you recommend internships or co-op activities to other students who are planning to go to college?
I think right away, I would say my main suggestion is to enjoy your summers.
Right.
But down the road, when you're a sophomore or junior, like last summer, I had the opportunity to live in the city with 3 of my best friends from home, former Columbia graduates, and I worked at a brokerage firm, which I really loved. It was a team environment. It was really intense, and it was an experience that I'm always going to remember and I enjoyed. So I definitely would recommend it for guys on the road. But at first, just enjoy your summers.
Well, I was going to also ask you how you feel you benefited from your experiences, but I'm pretty sure you answered that about as well as you know how. Do your younger sisters who are attending Columbia now have any sports prospects? In other
Well-
words, as a run of the family, I'm thinking they're going to be hardball pitchers.
Well, both my sisters play sports at Columbia. The older one of them, Celia, just finished her 4th year playing soccer, and she was amazing. But she's going to Wesleyan next year, and she's also an amazing actress. So I think she'll be pursuing that more. And I mean, Maya's had a lot of success. She's a sophomore, and she's had a lot of success with field hockey. But she's also an amazing violinist. So they're both amazing young women, and they'll do whatever's right for them.
I would tell you that my wife and my interest in Columbia High School is fairly expansive. We have a granddaughter who's going into her last year at Maplewood Middle, and when we were married a while ago, the music at our wedding was provided by Columbia High School musicians. And the photographs were taken by John Fisher, who is the photography teacher here at Columbia. We have a commitment to the school and to the students who I've met and who my wife and I have both met. I thank all three of you, Dylan, Brian, Margaret. When I opened the program, I promised conversation, so let's try that. Let me add a teacherly element. If you want to ask a question of each other, just raise your hand and address the person you'd like to ask. You can ask anything. I'll decide whether it's an appropriate question or not. I'm going to stand back, and because I imagine that most of you, or each of you, have questions of the others you'd like to ask. I don't think you've seen each other for a while. Comparing notes is encouraged. Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Go ahead, Brian.
Margaret, do you have any specific plans that you have, like, after you graduate with engineering? Like, what types of jobs?
Most of my friends are applying to grad schools right now, but I'm going the job route. I'm looking at roller coaster design companies, but it's a very exclusive field, so it's really unlikely I would get anything in that. And so in addition to that, I'm looking at aerospace companies and also at general transportation companies like train manufacturers.
The concept of acceleration and deceleration and preserving the energy that's involved in that applies to a lot of possible areas.
Yeah, definitely.
Production lines, vehicles, ships, airplanes, whatever. I like the idea that your major interest is dynamics. It's not exactly a quiescent field. Stuff happens when you're dynamic.
Right.
You hope.
Yeah,
but
we
in a
hope.
good way.
I'm lucky to have one of my professors is a leader in the field of dynamics, like multi-body dynamics analysis. So hopefully, it's really useful.
You talk to Brian on what that means. You got me.
I was just looking at, so if you can model, a building, say, as having, all these different floors connected in a certain way, then if it's, this is how it would respond to like this sort of wind load, this is how it would respond to an earthquake, things like that. But it gets really complicated when you look at things like aircraft, when like how you don't always know what it's going to be exposed to, and how it's a very complicated system. And how
You hope it's not exposed to the ground at too high a speed. Yeah.
Right.
What about you, Dylan? Who do you want to know about and why? Now you notice that he stands up straight. So do I. And that's because when we were boys, we were forced to wear uniforms a lot. It's good for your posture.
I guess for Brian, my one question would be, I'm sure we have a very different college experience than you do in terms of our everyday activities. And I know, at most colleges it's probably pretty laid back. You have a couple classes and then you have the rest of your time to figure out what you want to do. I assume that's a little different at your school, and I was wondering if you could maybe give us a sense of the everyday lifestyle at West Point.
All right, so during the school year, your days are pretty much the same every single day. So you'll get up around 6 every day, and make sure your room looks good, because people can always come by and check out your room, inspect it, and all that. Then you'll have breakfast formation at around 6:45. Then you go in and everyone eats breakfast together, all 4,400 cadets. And then classes start at 7:30, and you have classes until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And You'll have periods off here and there during the day, and you can do whatever you want. Most people just do homework or get something done during those hours off, and then afterwards you have sports. So everyone has to play a sport, either varsity, club, or intramurals. So, or the kids who play intramurals, sometimes they have to do military training right after classes or whatever. And then after that, it's mandatory study time from 7:30 until lights out is at 11:30 at night. So, and then on weekends, sometimes you'll have stuff like we have to go to all the home football games. We'll have these big room inspections some Saturdays, and or just military training. And so they find ways to take up your time even on weekends. So that's what the days are like.
So Margaret, I've heard the Claremont College is called the Harvard of Southern California. That may be an exaggeration, but having visited the campus on more than one occasion, I'm not so sure that it is.
Mm-hmm.
How do you like Claremont as a town?
Claremont's really wonderful. I mean, there are 5 undergraduate colleges and then 2 or 3 graduate institutions there.
Mm-hmm.
But each of them are so small that together, we think, at least all 5 of the undergraduate schools, I think we're only around 7,000 students together.
One of the things I liked about Claremont, and I lived not far from the campus for a while, is that the boulevard that goes all the way from whatever the street is, I forget, is on both sides are elm trees, American elms, that Claremont, the city, preserved and saved from Dutch elm disease 50 years ago. So to see these trees, which are sort of like watching dinosaurs graze, is an astonishing sight. Anyway, enough about me, and not so much about you. And thanks to each of you, Margaret Brier, Dylan Joyce, Brian Tumolillo, for an informative and engaging conversation. And thanks to you viewers for visiting Neighbors and Friends. I'm Charles Neighbors, and I'm looking forward to meeting you right here the next time.